The distress call from the ship that exploded, the first warning, reached Morgan Ellis 11 seconds before the cargo ship exploded. She was standing at the center of the patrol ship's bridge, watching a pale band of charged dust ripple across the navigation display. The cargo vessel ahead of them had already begun to turn away from the unstable edge of the storm, but the band changed direction faster than either ship could respond. "Reduce speed and widen separation," Morgan ordered. "Cargo vessel, turn 6 degrees starboard. Do not engage your main drive until the field settles." Captain Ethan Rowe acknowledged at once. His ship rolled slowly, heavy with freight and not built for fast corrections. Then the storm brightened. A white pulse struck the cargo vessel near its aft quarter. For one brief instant, the entire outer hull glowed along its frame lines. A section of plating swelled outward, as if something inside had forced a breath against it. The hull came apart. Morgan saw cargo modules split away, radiator fins tumble end over end, and the long engine assembly break into 3 separate pieces. The cargo ship's signal vanished before the soundless flash had faded from the main screen. "All stations, rescue configuration," Morgan said. "Take us in." Her patrol ship drove into the widening field of debris. They searched for escape pods first, then personal beacons, then suit transmitters, pressure pockets, life support heat, and any emergency signal that might have survived the blast. They found metal. They found freight containers, shattered antenna sections, cooling vanes, and pieces of the main drive. They found a sealed food locker and part of a maintenance tunnel with its emergency lights still blinking, but no person and no compartment large enough to hold one. The storm kept pressing closer. Morgan extended the search twice. On the third request, her systems officer told her the patrol ship's forward sensor grid was beginning to saturate. "If we stay another 9 minutes, we may lose the long-range array," he said. Morgan looked at the debris again. The cargo ship had carried 27 people. She knew the number because she had spoken to Ethan before entering the route. "One final sweep," she said. The final sweep found nothing. Morgan ordered the patrol ship out of the storm and signed the loss report herself. The search left a quiet change in the patrol ship. No one said that Morgan had kept them in the debris too long. No one said she had ended it too soon. The crew had watched the same empty scans and the same storm warnings. They knew there had been no safe choice that guaranteed a different result. Morgan still reviewed the rescue record before sleeping. She was not looking for a reason to blame herself. She was looking for an overlooked fact that might matter in a later investigation. The record showed a complete outer breakup. It showed no pod launches and no surviving beacon. It also showed several brief sensor gaps caused by the storm. Morgan marked them, but none was large enough to hide an escape craft moving away at normal speed. When she signed the final report, she chose exact language. The vessel's outer structure had suffered total destruction. No survivors or intact pressure compartments had been located. She did not write that every part of the ship had been recovered. At the time, the difference seemed administrative. For 3 days, they continued along the freight corridor. They still ran periodic scans behind them, even after the debris field disappeared beyond the range of ordinary sensors. No signal answered. On the third night, Morgan was reviewing the patrol ship's fuel balance when the communication screen switched on by itself. Static filled the display. A man's face appeared between gray bands of interference. Morgan knew him before the image fully stabilized. Ethan Rowe looked tired. His uniform collar was open, and one side of his face was lit by a red emergency lamp. Behind him, 2 members of his crew were working over a console. The scene did not look like a recording made before the accident. The bridge was dim, and a cracked panel hung at an angle near the ceiling. Ethan leaned toward the camera. "Commander Ellis," he said, "why does your ship keep following us?" No one on Morgan's bridge moved. Ethan glanced at something outside the camera's view. "We cannot see you," he continued. "We cannot see anything outside at all. But our instruments say your ship has been beside us for 3 days." Morgan turned toward the forward observation window. There was nothing beside them except stars. "Lock our navigation logs," she said quietly. "Cut external access to position data. Keep this channel at minimum power. The communications officer stared at her. Commander, the signal has no origin point. Then do not assume it needs one. Trace the path it is using. Morgan faced the screen again. Ethan, I need you to answer some questions before I can help you. Ask them. Tell me what happened after the explosion. Ethan looked at the people behind him, then back at Morgan. We did not see an explosion. We felt the ship shake. The emergency doors sealed around the pressure core. After that, the stars disappeared. The main drive stopped answering. We have power, but only from internal reserves. What have you felt since then? Movement, Ethan said. Not ours. Something else has been pulling us. A hard turn 3 days ago. A long period with no thrust. A short sideways shove that came in uneven pulses. Then a stronger acceleration several hours later. Morgan did not look at the navigation log. She did not need to. The hard turn had been her maneuver around the largest debris cluster. The long pause had been the sensor repair. The uneven sideways shove had come from a faulty attitude thruster. The stronger acceleration had been their departure from the storm. None of those details have been transmitted. Has anyone else contacted you? Morgan asked. No, your ship is the only thing our instruments detect. Morgan placed one hand on the edge of the command console. Do not move away from your current position. Ethan gave her a tired, humorless look. We have been trying to do that for 3 days. Morgan also asked Ethan to turn his camera slowly across the bridge. He showed her the sealed pressure doors, the dark forward windows, and a life support display operating below normal capacity. Condensation had collected along one wall, where the temperature controls no longer held steady. The crew had divided the surviving core into warm and cold sections to reduce energy use. They had shut down the galley, most cabin lights, cargo monitoring, and every system that did not support air, pressure, or internal control. How many people are conscious and able to work? Morgan asked. All 27, Ethan said. A few are resting in shifts. No serious injuries. The main problem is air quality and power. Water, enough. Heat, uneven but manageable. Can you see stars through any window? No, the windows are black. Not dark space, just black. Morgan asked him to shine a handheld lamp against the glass. The light reflected from the inside surface and went nowhere beyond it. That detail mattered. The bridge was not simply in an unlit region. Light itself was not crossing whatever boundary surrounded them. Ethan then showed her the ship's position display. It had no useful map, only a direction marker that remained fixed on Morgan's patrol ship. The range value changed slightly with each maneuver, but always returned to nearly the same distance. We thought the range sensor was damaged, Ethan said. Then your course changes kept appearing as force against our deck. Do not reset that display, Morgan said. It may be the only instrument showing the connection between us. For Ethan, the order changed the meaning of the broken-looking screen. It was no longer evidence that his ship had lost its way. It was evidence that something outside still knew where they were. Morgan muted the channel. Navigation, she said, prepare a lateral thrust at 1%. No announcement. No countdown. The officer hesitated only a moment. Ready. Morgan watched Ethan's image. Execute. The patrol ship gave a small sideways push. On the screen, Ethan tilted sharply to his right. A tool slid across the console behind him. One of his crew grabbed a rail. The thrust ended. The movement on Ethan's bridge stopped at the same instant. Everyone on Morgan's bridge understood what they had seen. The communications officer whispered, that was live. Yes, Morgan said. And whatever is holding them is moving with us. She reopened the channel. Ethan, did your ship register an external force? Yes. Same. Direction as the movement we just felt. Your main drive? Inactive. Attitude control. Not enough power to cause that. Morgan looked toward her systems officer. Compare our fuel use since the explosion with our actual course changes. He began working before she finished the sentence. Ethan watched her from the screen. What do you think is happening? I think your crew is alive, Morgan said. I also think my ship has been pulling part of yours without knowing it. Silence held for several seconds. Ethan finally said, part of my ship? We're going to find out which part. The patrol ship's fuel records did not show a dramatic error. They showed something more convincing. Since the moment the cargo vessel exploded, every course correction had required slightly more force than expected. Each difference was small enough to blame on storm damage, sensor recalibration, or imperfect fuel readings. Together, they formed a steady pattern. The patrol ship was carrying an invisible load. Morgan asked Ethan to repeat the lateral movement test using his own instruments. His crew placed a loose tool on the deck, marked its starting point, and waited. Morgan ordered a second controlled thrust, this time forward. The tool moved backward. Ethan's bridge registered the same acceleration as Morgan's ship. When the patrol ship reduced speed, the cargo vessel's pressure core felt the same change. The link was physical. It was also immediate. Morgan ordered one more test, this time to learn whether the hidden mass trailed behind them or stayed fixed beside the patrol ship. The patrol vessel rotated slowly without changing course. As it turned, Ethan's instruments showed the source direction moving with the same pattern. His pressure core did not swing like cargo at the end of cable. It remained aligned with an invisible point beside Morgan's ship. When the rotation stopped, the range settled at almost the same value as before. The force pattern placed the hidden core inside a small volume only a few dozen yards from the patrol ship. Every ordinary sensor showed that space is empty. Morgan marked it as a calculated position, not a sensor contact. They could feel the mass inside it and speak to the people there, but they could not see across the boundary. Both crews were frightened. Neither allowed fear to become an explanation. Morgan transmitted a report to Sector Command. The response arrived less than 2 minutes later. Commander Ellis, the duty supervisor, said, "You are describing a signal without coordinates and a mass without sensor return. You are also operating near a storm system that has already destroyed one vessel." "I am describing 27 living people," Morgan replied. "You have not located them. They are attached to our movement. That does not explain where they are." "No, it explains why leaving may kill them." The supervisor's expression hardened, not from cruelty, but from responsibility. "Your reserve use is already above mission limits. A second storm front is forming along your previous route. Hold present position while we send a technical team. Travel time, at least 18 hours. Morgan looked at Ethan's fading signal strength on a side display. "We may not have 18 hours. Then provide evidence stronger than an unexplained call." Morgan ended the exchange without argument. "Rebuild the debris map," she told her crew. "Do not classify by material. Classify every piece by where it belonged on the cargo ship." The work took almost an hour. The patrol ship had stored scans from every pass through the debris field. Its systems officer reconstructed the cargo vessel in sections, placing each recorded fragment into a transparent model. Outer hull sections appeared first, then cargo frames, cooling surfaces, antenna arms, and parts of the engine assembly. Large gaps remained in the center. Morgan watched the model turn. "Where's the bridge structure?" she asked. "Not in the debris." "Crew quarters?" "Not present." "Central life support?" "Also absent." The officer highlighted the missing region. The cargo ship's outer body had been destroyed, but the entire pressure core was missing. Morgan called Ethan. "Your outer hull is gone," she said. "Your cargo modules and main engine are in the debris field, but we cannot find a single fragment from your bridge, crew quarters, or central pressure shell." Ethan looked around his dim bridge. "Because we are still inside them." "Yes." His chief technician appeared beside him, carrying a portable display. "We found an emergency entry in the ship's systems," she said. "It is not in our standard operating manual. It is part of the pressure core protection package." She turned the display toward the camera. The diagram was simple enough to understand without technical language. A ship moved through a wave of destructive energy. Before the wave reached the center, the pressure core vanished from the diagram. The outer hull broke apart. Several seconds later, the core returned. Morgan watched the sequence twice. "A shelter outside normal observation," her systems officer said. "Not far away, just separated from ordinary light and sensor contact." The technician on Ethan's side nodded. a temporary emergency bunker. The core is moved out of the path of the blast, then placed back when the danger passes. How long is it designed to stay there? Morgan asked. Seconds. Ethan glanced toward the red lights around him. We have been here for 3 days. The technician opened the event log. The first entries were clear. Danger detected. Pressure doors sealed. Core isolation complete. Shelter state activated. Then the process stopped. The next line read, Original return reference lost. Morgan understood before anyone explained it. The outer hull carried the location the system expected to return to, she said. When the hull broke apart, the shelter no longer knew where to place the core. The technician nodded. A later entry read, Searching for stable navigation field. It was followed by external field acquired. Morgan's systems officer pointed at the timestamp. That happened when we entered the debris field. The emergency shelter had searched for something stable in normal space. It had found Morgan's patrol ship. Like a lifeboat hooking itself to the nearest tow line, the hidden pressure core had attached to the patrol ship's navigation field. That explained every movement Ethan's crew had felt. It explained the extra fuel use. It explained why the patrol ship alone received the call. It explained why neither side could see the other. Morgan asked the technician to search for communication records. The answer was buried deeper in the log. For the first hours, the shelter had blocked all outside signals to protect the core from the storm. It had attempted to return to normal space again and again. Each attempt failed because the original reference no longer existed. After 3 days, the system entered a final rescue mode. It weakened part of its isolation and opened a narrow communication channel along the same connection that held it to the patrol ship. That was why Ethan's call had appeared without an ordinary origin point. It had not crossed open space. It had traveled along the invisible attachment between the two vessels. Morgan summarized the discovery in the simplest terms she could. Your outer ship was destroyed, she told Ethan. Your pressure core survived inside an emergency shelter. The shelter could not return you to the place where the ship used to be, so it attached itself to our navigation field. We have been towing you since we entered the debris. Ethan turned toward the black windows of his bridge. So you were never following us? No, we were following you. You were attached to us. For the first time since the call began, neither captain spoke. Morgan looked through her own window toward the empty space where the hidden core had to be. Ethan stood only a short distance away, looking back through darkness that allowed no light to pass. Two bridges were facing each other. Neither could see the other. The discovery changed the way Ethan's crew managed their remaining resources. Before the call, they had assumed rescue depended on repairing their own drive or finding a way to make an ordinary transmission. They had spent power waking systems that could never work inside the shelter. Now, they shut those systems down permanently. The technician isolated the internal shelter controls from the damaged ship network. A life support team adjusted air circulation so the cleanest air moved through occupied compartments first. Crew members stopped walking between sections unless their work required it. Morgan listened while Ethan assigned the tasks. He did not promise everyone that rescue was certain. He told them that the patrol ship had confirmed their position, that both crews were studying the same failure, and that every unit of save power increased the chance of opening the shelter. His crew responded with practical questions. Which doors should remain sealed? Which batteries could be moved safely? How often should they test the attitude thrusters? Could they reduce heating further without damaging the manual controls? Morgan heard no panic in their voices. She heard people turning a mystery into work. On the patrol ship, her own crew did the same. They placed a permanent marker on the navigation display for the blind space. The marker did not pretend to be a sensor contact. It was a calculated region based on force, range, and Ethan's measurements. Every future maneuver would be planned for 2 vessels, one visible and one hidden. Morgan reduced acceleration limits. She ordered wider turns and slower corrections. What had seemed like harmless handling before could throw Ethan's crew across their bridge. The hidden core had become part of her command, even before she could see it. The discovery solved where the crew was. It did not solve how to bring them back. The shelter would not open on command. Ethan's technician found a manual release panel, but the control remained locked. The shelter still believed the return process was incomplete. Morgan's systems officer studied the original event log. The system is waiting for a final signal, he said. It saw the danger rise. It isolated the core. It expected a specific energy pattern to tell it the wave had passed and normal space was stable again. Can we send that pattern? Morgan asked. Not yet. We only have the outside half of the record. Ethan's technician had the inside half. The patrol ship had recorded the storm's energy as it struck the cargo vessel. The cargo core had recorded how the shelter reacted from within. The two crews synchronized their timestamps. They found a sequence. First, the energy rose sharply as the storm hit. Then it dropped for a fraction of a second. Finally, a narrower directional pulse crossed. The shelter had closed during the first rise. It had prepared to return during the short drop. The last directional pulse should have given it a stable path back. But the outer hull had broken apart before that final step completed. The shelter was not waiting for another explosion. It was waiting for the missing return signal. Morgan named it that because everyone on both bridges needed one simple term: the return signal. Can our ship create it? She asked. Her systems officer examined the required energy level, not from reserves alone, not while keeping the navigation field stable and holding enough power to control both ships if the core reappears. Where do we get it? He brought up the storm map, the edge of the same storm system. Morgan understood the cost immediately. They had moved away from the danger. To free Ethan's crew, they would have to go back, not into the storm center, only close enough to capture a suitable energy wave, reduce it, shape it through the patrol ship's navigation equipment, and send it along the hidden connection. Before requesting approval, Morgan required both crews to test every safe part of the plan. The patrol ship sent a weak calibration pulse through the anchor. Ethan's instruments detected it, and the manual release panel changed state without beginning the full sequence. When Ethan adjusted the internal stabilizer by the smallest permitted amount, Morgan's display showed a matching change in the anchor load. The controls on both sides were linked through the same shelter boundary. Their first timing test was late because the communication channel distorted Morgan's voice. They stopped relying on speech and synchronized their clocks directly through the anchor. The next test fell within the required limit. That became the basis of the final plan. Ethan would not wait to hear Morgan, and Morgan would not wait for Ethan to confirm. Both would act on the same clock. Morgan also set 3 abort rules. If the storm energy exceeded the safe limit, her ship would release it without sending the preparation pulse. Without that pulse, Ethan would keep the stabilizer active. If his controls did not change from locked to ready, he would not begin the release. One more thing, Morgan said. We do not know which side of the core will face us when it returns. We can use the attitude thrusters to control the roll, Ethan replied. Only the roll. Do not try to create distance. If we appear too close, I will move the patrol ship. Your thrusters are too small for that. Ethan glanced at the black window. That may be the first time I've been glad our engines are gone. Morgan almost smiled. Keep finding advantages. The plan had another problem. The shelter was still being held closed from inside the pressure core. Ethan's technician showed them the manual stabilizer. It had kept the core aligned for 3 days. It also prevented the shelter boundary from opening. Ethan has to shut it off during the final part of the return signal, the technician said. What happens when he does? Morgan asked. The communication channel may disappear. The core may begin to rotate. The shelter cannot return to its current waiting state. Can you reopen the stabilizer? Not if the release sequence begins. Morgan looked at Ethan. He had heard every word. If I shut it down too early, we lose the anchor, he said. If you shut it down too late, the signal passes and the shelter remains closed, Morgan replied. How many attempts? The answer came from both technicians at nearly the same time. 1. Sector Command did not approve immediately. The duty supervisor listened while Morgan presented the evidence in order. The direct call had reacted to secret ship movements. The patrol ship had consumed additional energy consistent with towing a hidden mass. The debris field contained the outer ship, but none of the pressure core. The emergency logs showed the core entering a shelter state, losing its return reference, and attaching to the patrol ship's navigation field. The air system inside the core was failing slowly. The communication channel was weakening. The supervisor remained silent until Morgan finished. "You are proposing to take a power-limited patrol vessel back toward the storm that destroyed the cargo ship," he said. "To the outer edge only. You will use most of your reserve power. Yes. You may not have enough energy to leave afterward. That is possible. And if the shelter opens with the wrong relative velocity, we will use the remaining power to match it. If the energy wave exceeds your limits, we abort before Ethan disables the stabilizer." The supervisor looked away, reading the supporting data. "Why not wait for the technical ship? Because the core is attached to our field, not theirs. They cannot see it. They cannot communicate with it. Transferring the anchor has never been tested, and switching off our field may cause the core to drift beyond recovery. How long does their life support have?" Morgan looked toward Ethan's signal. "Not long enough for 18 hours with a safe margin." The supervisor finally nodded. "One attempt. Your crew must be informed of the risk. You retain authority to abort at any stage before the internal stabilizer is released." "Understood." "And Commander Ellis?" "Yes. If the first energy wave is outside your limit, do not use it because you are afraid there will not be a second." Morgan held his gaze. "I will not." After the call ended, Morgan addressed her crew. She gave them the facts without a speech. The hidden core was attached to their ship. Leaving it closed would eventually kill the people inside. Opening it required returning to the storm edge and spending most of the patrol ship's remaining power. Failure could leave them unable to escape or could cause the pressure core to appear with dangerous motion. No one objected. The navigation officer asked for the planned approach speed. The systems officer asked how much reserve Morgan wanted protected for the final velocity match. The communications officer began building the clock's synchronization sequence. On Ethan's bridge, the crew prepared their half of the operation. They moved everyone into the strongest sections of the pressure core. They secured tools, sealed interior doors, shut down non-essential systems, and redirected power toward the manual release. The small attitude thrusters were still functional. They were not strong enough to move the core through space, but they could slow a roll or correct a tilt when the shelter opened. Morgan added the attitude thrusters to the final sequence and reserved enough patrol ship power to correct whatever drift remained. The patrol ship turned back toward the storm. Ethan and his crew felt the turn as a slow pressure pulling them sideways. This time, the force did not frighten them. It told them Morgan was still there. As the storm grew brighter on the patrol ship's sensors, Morgan and Ethan synchronized their clocks using a pulse sent along the hidden connection. Morgan explained the sequence one final time. "We approach at low speed. We capture an energy wave. If it is within limits, we send the preparation pulse. You move power to the release system, but keep the stabilizer active. When our final return pulse begins, you count to the agreed mark and shut the stabilizer down." Ethan nodded. "After that, we may lose communication." "Yes. Our core may begin to rotate. Use the attitude thrusters only to control rotation. Do not try to move away from us. And you will reduce the anchor field when the load begins to appear. Then match your velocity." Ethan looked around his bridge. "We have spent 3 days thinking an invisible ship was dragging us through the dark." Morgan said, "It was." A small smile crossed his face. "That is not especially comforting." "No, but now we know why." The return trip took longer than the original escape from the storm. Morgan refused to accelerate quickly. Every increase in speed placed force on a pressure core whose outer supports no longer existed. She treated the hidden vessel as if it were docked beside them with a fragile connection. Ethan reported each change from inside. A gentle turn felt like the floor tilting under their feet. A small correction from the patrol ship moved loose straps along the wall. The fixed direction marker on Ethan's display continued to point toward Morgan. Between reports, Both crews worked in silence. Morgan walked the patrol ship's bridge rather than remaining at the command station. She checked the reserve projections, the capture field, and the final motion plan. She asked each officer to explain the condition that would make them abort. The systems officer would abort if captured energy exceeded the shaping limit. The navigation officer would abort if the anchor load became unstable before Ethan released the stabilizer. The communications officer would abort if clock synchronization drifted beyond tolerance. Morgan would make the final decision. On Ethan's bridge, the technician tested the manual control one last time without moving it beyond the safe point. The crew secured the portable display that had first shown Morgan the shelter diagram. They tied down the tool that had slid during the lateral test. Ethan moved through the occupied compartments. He told the crew that the patrol ship might lose communication during the final stage. He explained that silence would not mean the rescue had failed. It would mean the shelter boundary was changing as expected. One crew member asked what they should do if the lights went out. "Stay secured and wait for the return," Ethan said. "And if we do not return," Ethan did not offer false certainty, "then we will have used the only plan supported by the evidence. Until that moment, we do our part correctly." When he returned to the bridge, Morgan was waiting on the screen. "Everyone informed?" she asked. "Yes." "Any objections?" "None." "Same here." For a moment, they were not commander and cargo captain. They were two people responsible for everyone standing behind them. Then the storm appeared on Morgan's sensors, and the moment ended. The storm edge appeared ahead as a broad curve of charged particles. It was not a wall. It moved like weather across black space, bright in some places and nearly invisible in others. Morgan ordered the ship into position. The first energy wave arrived sooner than expected. "Capture field active," the systems officer said. The patrol ship shuddered. Numbers rose across the main console. Intensity above limit by 12%. Morgan saw the reserve estimate falling as the ship struggled to control the wave. The communications officer looked toward her. "Ethan is waiting for the preparation pulse." Morgan remembered the sector supervisor's warning. "Do not use the first wave because you are afraid there will not be a second." "Dump it," she ordered. The systems officer released the captured energy away from both ships. The patrol vessel shook harder. Warning lights flashed. The disposal process consumed power they would not recover. "Wave cleared," the officer said. "Reserve down another 6%. On the screen, Ethan remained steady. He had not shut down the stabilizer. He had trusted Morgan to abort if the conditions were wrong. "Tell him we are waiting for the next wave," Morgan said. The communications officer tried. Static swallowed half the message. The storm was interfering with the narrow channel. Ethan's reply arrived broken, but understandable. Still holding the stabilizer. Morgan watched the sensor field. A second wave formed along the storm edge. It was weaker and more even. "Estimated intensity within limit," the systems officer said. "Prepare capture." The patrol ship aligned. On Ethan's bridge, the emergency lights dimmed as power shifted toward the manual release. His technician confirmed that the small attitude thrusters were ready. The air system had dropped to its lowest stable setting. Ethan looked at the synchronized clock. Morgan's voice came through in fragments. "Second wave. Acceptable. Preparation pulse in 10 seconds." The crew around Ethan took their positions. The preparation pulse moved through the invisible connection. Their shelter controls responded for the first time in 3 days. A row of locked indicators changed from red to amber. "Return sequence recognized," the technician said. The communications channel broke apart. Ethan heard Morgan's final words through static. "Hold until the last mark." Then the screen went dark. On the patrol ship, Morgan lost Ethan's image. "Communication channel gone," the officer said. "Expected," Morgan replied, though the silence felt larger than she had expected. The second energy wave reached the capture field. The systems officer reduced its intensity, then shaped it through the navigation array according to the recorded pattern. Morgan watched 3 displays at once. The storm energy, the anchor load, the synchronized clock. Inside the hidden core, Ethan shut down the remaining secondary systems. The bridge lights fell to a dull red. He kept the stabilizer active while the return sequence advanced. The technician counted the marks. 3. The core trembled. 2. A low vibration moved through the floor. 1. Ethan placed his hand on the manual control. Now, he shut down the stabilizer. The effect was immediate. The stable pressure that had held the core level for 3 days vanished. The deck tilted. The hidden structure began to rotate. Ethan fired one of the small attitude thrusters. The rotation slowed, but did not stop. Again, short pulse, the technician said. He fired a second burst. The core steadied. On the patrol ship, Morgan saw the anchor load fluctuate. Internal stabilizer is off, the systems officer said. We have movement in the connection. Send a return signal. The shaped energy passed through the navigation field and into the hidden shelter. The patrol ship's reserve level dropped sharply. Signal complete. Morgan kept both hands on the edge of the console. Nothing appeared. The forward window showed empty space. Radar showed empty space. The anchor display still reported the hidden load. Do not send another pulse, Morgan said. No one had suggested it, but she wanted the order spoken aloud. They waited. 3 seconds passed, then 5, then 8. The anchor load began to fall. The navigation officer looked at Morgan. We are losing them. No, Morgan said. Reduce drive output. Hold our velocity. The load did not vanish. It changed. For 3 days, the hidden core had pulled on the patrol ship through the anchor. Now, that force was transferring somewhere else. A star beside the ship bent into a thin curve. Then another. The empty space between them distorted as if seen through thick glass. Visual change, starboard side, the communications officer said. Morgan turned. At first, she saw only a dark line. The line widened. A scorched metal edge emerged from nothing. Then part of a pressure frame. Then a window. Light glowed behind it. The cargo ship's pressure core returned to normal space a few dozen yards from the patrol vessel. It was not the ship Morgan remembered. The outer hull was gone. The cargo sections were gone. The main engine assembly was gone. Blackened structural edges marked where those parts had once connected. But the bridge remained. The living compartments remained. The pressure shell remained. And behind the windows, people were standing. The core rotated slowly as it appeared. Relative roll increasing, the navigation officer warned. A small thruster flashed along the side of the core. The rotation slowed. Ethan was using the equipment they had prepared. Morgan ordered the patrol ships drive to minimum. Reduce anchor field by 20%. Match lateral drift. The ship responded sluggishly. Its reserves were nearly gone. A second small thruster fired from the cargo core. The two vessels settled into the same motion. Distance stopped closing. No collision came. The communications board lit with a new signal. This one had an ordinary position. Morgan opened it. Ethan appeared on the screen, but this time there was no static. Morgan looked past the image to the actual bridge visible through the nearby window. We see you, she said. Ethan turned toward his own window. His crew gathered behind him. For the first time in 3 days, they saw the patrol ship. We see you too, he said. The words were quiet. They were enough. The rescue crews connected the two vessels with a temporary transfer tube. Ethan's people crossed in small groups while the patrol ship maintained a sheer velocity. They were pale and exhausted, but all 27 were alive. The transfer took time because the pressure core no longer had a normal docking surface. The rescue crew attached the temporary tube to an emergency ring near the bridge. Before opening either side, they tested the seal twice and matched pressure slowly. Morgan refused to rush the last stage. The mystery had been solved, but the people were not safe until they crossed. The first person through carried the portable shelter log. The second helped guide a crew member whose legs had stiffened after days of reduced movement. Others brought only small personal items and the data modules needed for the investigation. No one tried to save cargo. No one asked them to. Ethan remained inside until the final count confirmed that all 26 members of his crew had crossed. He walked through last, carrying the manual stabilizer key in one hand. On the patrol ship, Ordinary gravity felt slightly different from the shifting deck he had lived on for 3 days. He stopped after the hatch closed and placed one hand against the wall. Morgan waited without speaking. Ethan looked back through the small window in the sealed transfer door. His pressure core floated beyond it, scorched and incomplete, but visible. During the first day, he said, "We thought the black windows meant every star had gone out." Morgan understood why the simple sentence carried more weight than a description of fear. "What changed your mind?" she asked. "The force. Something kept moving us. If we were still moving, there had to be something beyond the dark." Morgan looked toward the bridge. "Your first call was not exactly a request for rescue." "No," Ethan said. "I thought you owed me an explanation." "You were right about that part." Ethan nodded toward the visible pressure core. "That is all that survived?" he asked. "That is the part that left before the blast reached it," Morgan said. Ethan studied the exposed framework. "I watched our internal instruments for 3 days. I thought someone was towing us without showing themselves." Morgan said, "Someone was—" He looked at her. "We were attached to your navigation field from the moment you entered the debris. So every time you turned, we pulled you with us. And when you stopped your engines, we stopped too." "Yes." Ethan gave a tired laugh. "I accuse the only ship keeping us from disappearing of following us. You did not have enough information. Neither did you." Morgan looked through the observation window. Far behind them, the debris field contained the outer shell of Ethan's ship. Beside them floated the pressure core with its windows still bright. Both things were true. The cargo vessel's outer body had been destroyed, but the emergency shelter had moved its occupied core beyond ordinary observation before the blast reached it. When the original return point vanished, the shelter had attached itself to Morgan's navigation field. That connection carried force and, after 3 days, the rescue call. It carried neither light nor radar. Bringing the core back had required both crews. Morgan recreated the missing return signal from outside. Ethan released the stabilizer from within. Neither side could have completed the rescue alone. A low warning sounded on the patrol ship. The systems officer reported that they no longer had enough power to continue the assigned route. Morgan transmitted a request for a support vessel and accepted the delay, the investigation, and the formal review that would follow. The cost was real. Her patrol ship would need assistance leaving the storm corridor. The scheduled mission was over. Every decision would be examined later. Morgan did not regret making it. Ethan joined her at the forward window. The exposed pressure core drifted beside them, no longer invisible. "I keep thinking about your search," he said. "You were looking for us in the debris. We searched every piece we could find, and we were right next to you." "Yes. You passed us more than once." "Probably." Neither spoke for a moment. Morgan remembered the first image of the cargo ship breaking apart. She had not been wrong about what she saw. The ship had been destroyed. She had only mistaken the destruction of its outer body for the destruction of everything inside it. Beyond the window, pieces of the dead hull turned slowly in the distance. Nearer to them, the surviving core still held pressure and light. The distress call had not come from a ship that returned from the dead. It had come from the part of the ship that had never died, hidden beside the people who were still searching for it. Sometimes the most important choice is simply to look again when the evidence changes. Would you have waited for another rescue ship, or taken Morgan's carefully tested chance while the connection still held? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this science fiction mystery, please leave a like and share it with someone who appreciates stories built on discovery, logic, and human choice. Subscribe to the channel for more journeys into the unknown, where an answer may be much closer than it first appears.